Shuhari. So this is an interesting concept I've been reading about. I only discovered it a few days ago, and I've kind of heard parts of it before, just not by name, because it is something that you've probably thought about a little bit. But it's a Japanese philosophy for mastery and for learning, and it's very interesting in how it applies to all things, but especially language learning, which is what this channel is about. So Shuhari is basically an ancient Japanese martial art concept that describes the stages of learning to mastery. So starting on the left, there's the learn, the break, and then finally the make stage, and it relates to rules. So how you treat rules and wisdom as far as learning. So the first stage, Shu, which is the first of the three symbols for each of them. The first stage, Shu, means learn, and it literally means protect or obey. So the Shu stage is the beginning of learning, and it's about traditional wisdom, following the teachings of experts, and concentrating on how to perform properly. So basically, at this early stage, if you take learning a language, for example, if it's your first language apart from your native language that you're learning, you don't have any experience really doing it, so you can't really question people. You just kind of have to accept teaching, which is also why I've talked about in a previous video with the one master principle. That's why it's important to learn from a variety of people, because you don't have that scope yet. But that's another thing. So yeah, Shu is basically the learning stage. You're learning rules, you're getting the groundwork basically, and then as you get better, you progress to basically Ha, which is the break stage of this, the second stage, and it literally means detach or digress. And what that detach or digress means is you're detaching from blindly following. So at the heartbreak stage, you're branching out from the traditional path, you're finding exceptions to rules, and you start to innovate your own techniques. So as you are more intelligent now in whatever concept you're learning, obviously we're doing language learning, but it really applies to everything, you start to find exceptions, and you can almost spot things that are wrong, because you have enough knowledge that you can find things that are wrong. And it's interesting because sometimes some of the things you spot that are exceptions aren't, and the things you already learnt are the exceptions. So that's a really, really intelligent stage, because you're starting to almost form your own opinions and find what's right, what's wrong. And with language learning, you'll be able to read back over things, and you'll be able to find mistakes, because in your brain you have this idea of what things are supposed to be like, and this does challenge you. Sometimes you're actually challenging what the old things you think, because you're finding things that are wrong in your mind, but they're actually right. So it's a very intelligent stage to be at, and it's the second stage. And then finally, as you're more advanced in learning something, or the most advanced, is Re, which is the make stage, and it literally means leave or separate. And the way leave or separate differs from detach and digress. Detach or digress is you're breaking away from basically blindly following, and you're able to question and that kind of thing. Questioning is one of the most intelligent things you can do. That's why the middle stage is so intelligent. The final stage is also intelligent, because leave or separate basically means you're not leaving learning per se, but you're more independent than ever. So the make stage is to do with almost making your own rules. So you're adapting your own style, and with your great knowledge of the concept now, you're creating your own wisdom. So because you've learnt it, you've gone from point A to point B, you've gone from Shu to Re. Now that you know where you end up, you can almost look back on that path and almost design it in a better way. So say you were taught a certain way to go from A to B. Now that you've done it, you can look back and go, okay, it would have actually been quicker if I did this. And that's how teaching evolves over time, technically. People are taught things and they realize, I would have responded better if I was taught this way. So that's kind of the Re stage. You're making your own rules. And it does say no rules governing technique. That's the reason it says that is because Shuhari is originally for martial arts, where by the end you're in a thing called flow state, which is basically you're not needing to plan out attacks and everything. You're so knowledgeable that you're able to just fight completely paying attention. But with learning, that no rules governing technique basically means you kind of just know what to do as far as learning goes. So to be simple about it, Shu is learning the rules, Ha is being able to break the rules, and Re is being able to make the rules. Those are the three stages of learning according to this concept. So if we were talking about language learning, just to sum it up basically, Shu would be learning the basics, Ha would be you're intelligent enough to start spotting mistakes and breaking rules, and Re would be you're able to produce content, teach people, that kind of thing, because you're intelligent enough. Application to language learning. Understanding Shuhari is like a mirror of the language learning process. You've probably just seen that through there. And yeah, you start by learning from experts, you know enough to find exceptions, and then you can freestyle at the end. I just talked about that. It's not just about rules though, it does apply to other parts of learning. So as a learner advances, you might go from reading to finding mistakes, and then to writing your own things. And that's writing your own things isn't like writing your own rules. You're just producing your own content because of your knowledge of rules. And at that point, it's easy. If you think about, actually, well, everyone here is fluent in at least one language. When you're writing in English, you're not thinking constantly about rules. Like, for example, when I was learning Italian, which is my second language, so the first one I taught myself, you kind of have to think about word order and grammar if you want to try and get everything 100% right. Whereas nobody writing in English ever really does that. Like, thinks about, oh, do I put I first before I say, if I'm saying I am going, do I put I before am? Like, it's just obvious because that's your language. So that's kind of, you're at the re-stage in English. You're able to, you don't even need to think. You're almost in that freestyle flow state where before it says no rules governing technique. There's no rules governing your technique when you speak English because you're so adept at it. You've been doing it your whole life. And yeah, you're able to write anything in English without having to think about it, all that stuff, and you can teach it kind of. We're pretty bad at teaching, at least in Australia, the education system. We don't really learn much about our own language, so kind of when you're teaching someone English, the main thing you'd say is, oh yeah, that feels right. But yeah, you can basically teach that. But that's just an interesting concept I've learnt about, and I wanted to share it with you. Shuhari is what it's called. You can look it up and research it if you'd like. Anyway, thank you, and subscribe.